Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I am Sean Valls. I'm here with Mike Kumar, and today we're going back to Fantasyland. We did a conference realignment college football video with James about 2 weeks ago, and we're bringing Mike in, and we're doing it in basketball now. And this is obviously not realistic, but it is fun to think about. We could, get some old rivalries together, keep some new ones, and it's something fun to think about. And we've got some new conferences, we've got some current ones, and it should be pretty fun. My universe is a different universe than my football one, so that one doesn't exist when we're talking about this video. But Mike, we have the teams here on the left. Now, there's quite a few more basketball teams and football teams, so there I might be missing a few. So if I do, I'm going to have to type it in and color it then. But Mike, let's start with your first conference.
Awesome. My first conference, we're going to bring back the Southwest Conference,
All right.
a conference that existed from the 1930s until 1991 when it was became defunct when teams left to go to either the SEC, the Big Eight, or to minor conferences like the Mountain West or Conference USA. This was a conference that was controlled by Texas teams. So when you think about those big time Texas schools, they were all together. Some of my, college sports junkies can talk about the days when it was all Texas schools in Arkansas. So with that being said, the Southwest Conference is going to start with the University of Texas,
Okay.
Texas A&M,
All right.
Texas Tech.
Okay, good. They're right next to each other for me. So this is I have a feeling the next ones that are coming are pretty close here too.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. The school in Fort Worth, it's purple.
Okay.
SMU.
All right. So SMU I don't have, so we're gonna have to type this in. SMU is relatively blue, right? So we're gonna give them blue.
Mhm.
Okay. That's five teams. How
Yep.
many total are in here?
We've got 10.
10. Okay.
You've got Houston.
Okay. So Houston sticking with that Texas theme.
Hmm. We've got the Baylor Bears.
Okay.
And then we've got three out of state teams that will join this conference. Arkansas will be one, as Arkansas was a traditional member of the Southwest Conference.
Okay.
And then adding our neighbors to the north, adding Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Yeah. So now that James and I have done this with football and now basketball, all these teams, obviously have football, and this was very close to our conferences in football, and spoiler alert, it's pretty close to mine in basketball too. But that seems to be, you have the seven Texas schools. Oklahoma's just north of it, and then you grab Arkansas from the slightly to the east there. It does make a lot of sense why this was a conference. Why these teams are most of them are have been in the same conference recently. But yeah, it should be a really fun conference for basketball, Mike. In our make believe universe, we've got John Calipari, we've got Scott Drew, we've got Grant McCasland, Kelvin Sampson. Like this would be a really fun conference.
Yeah, absolutely. This wouldn't be necessarily the high caliber that the Big 12 is currently. We've got a lot of Big 12 teams in here. But with that being said, it's definitely a top tier college basketball conference, especially when you consider that these teams are playing each other twice a season. Have an 18 game conference season. You'd play each place at home and away. When you look at some of the environments here, Austin, Texas, great place to play when the Longhorns are good. A&M always brings a strong crowd with the 12th man. I know that's in football, but basketball as well. You look at Arkansas's passionate fan base. Houston's now a juggernaut in basketball. It just seems like this conference really fits well together. It's a reason that this is a historic conference that old Texas sports fans love to reminisce about the days with high cheating at SMU and the Southwest Conference. So we're bringing it back with a little bit of a twist.
All right, Mike. Well, let's go to conference number two.
Conference number two is going to be something very similar to what we saw early in the late 2000s and early 2010s. It's called the Pac-12.
Hmm.
Um, similar to the Pac-12 conference that was defunct a couple of years ago,
It's coming
with a
back
couple of
next year
changes. It is coming
as
back
the
next
Pac
year.
7/12 with all different teams,
Yeah,
but you know.
7 to 12,
But who's
Pac
in
middle school.
your make believe universe Pac-12?
So we're going to have the traditional Pac-10 teams all in here. So we're going to go with Stanford, Cal, UCLA,
Okay.
USC, Oregon, Washington,
Okay.
Washington State,
Yep.
Oregon State,
Okay.
Arizona,
Yep.
Arizona State,
So
and
there's your old Pac-10.
that's your
Um,
Pac-10. And now, given I think most of these conferences, I think all of these conferences would work for both football and basketball. But for the sake of basketball, I'm going to throw two more teams in there, and that's going to be Gonzaga and St. Mary's.
okay.
So,
So St. Mary's is one that I do not have on here. But yeah, I mean that clearly works both geographically and basketball wise. Um,
yeah,
St. Mary's and Gonzaga have been playing at a comparable level to pretty much every team here for good 10 to 15 years now,
yeah.
and maybe other than Arizona. Like if this was to happen right now, I think that Gonzaga and St. Mary's would be the second and third best teams in this league.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there's a lot of reason that a lot of these schools are put together. One is traditional rivalries that you've seen in all these Pac-10 schools, regionality, they're all in the same region. But you also look across this Pac-12 conference and you see a lot of uh, pretty elite academic institutions as well here. You look at Stanford, Cal, UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington, all really good academic schools. So it just seems like it's a really good fit. And hey, no more traveling. I started thinking about this last night, Sean, when I was watching Oregon on a Monday night going to Jersey Mike's Arena to play Rutgers. It is asinine that a team has to go travel across the country to play a basketball game during the week.
And
These
there's
guys got school
multiple
too.
conferences where that has to take place, Mike. We've talked about it in the ACC,
Yeah.
which of course is called the Atlantic Coast Conference. Not really anymore. And then in the
Yeah.
Big Ten, like you said, Oregon had a Maryland. They played in College Park the game before too. So yeah, these guys are going on like MLB, 3 game
Yeah.
series road trips in terms of days that they're away. And, MLB is 162 games. But all right, let's go to conference number 3. Mike, you've got 22 teams off the board. Who have you got for conference number 3?
Conference number three, I'm going to go with the Big Ten. Um, And spoiler alert, this is going to be the same exact Big Ten that you saw from 1990 to about 2011. It's
Okay.
the exact same.
So pre
So
Nebraska Big Ten.
it's a Nebraska-free Big Ten. We've got
Okay.
Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Northwestern, Ohio State, Purdue, Wisconsin, and Penn State.
Could you start that over? Sorry, the Big Ten teams are way at the bottom. So we're gonna go
Oh, you're good.
Indiana. I'll
Yep.
color them in later. So we got
Yeah.
Indiana,
Indiana,
Illinois.
Illinois,
Yep.
Iowa,
Okay.
Michigan,
Michigan State.
mhm,
Okay.
Minnesota,
Okay.
Northwestern,
Yep.
Ohio State,
Okay.
Purdue,
Purdue,
Wisconsin,
Wisconsin,
Penn State.
Penn State. Okay. Yeah, there's a little bit of a little bit of a I go in a little bit of a different direction here, which I think you'll be, pretty surprised when you hear it. But this is, the I think that's 11 teams there in the Big Ten.
Yes.
This was, when we just started watching sports, this was the Big Ten. I do remember, I think 1 year pre Nebraska, like pretty
Hmm.
11 teams. It wasn't a 20 game season at the time, but you could still do a true home and away if you play a 20 game season with these 11 teams. But Mike, while I color in these teams, um, tell us a little bit why you returned to the old glory here in the Big Ten.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it is less is more. Look, these are really good academic institutions for the most part, really good state schools. You're limiting travel significantly from what you currently have in the Big Ten, where you're going from border to border across the United States. Um, a lot of these teams have very similar profiles in terms of school size and academic prowess. There's a few teams that I considered. I considered throwing Dayton in here to have another Ohio school. I just didn't think they fit the profile that the rest of the Big Ten teams did. So I kept them out, and I kept Xavier, Butler, and Marquette out for those similar reasons. Because spoiler, we're separating church and state here when we're talking Catholic schools versus the rest of the Midwest.
Yeah, those schools that you mentioned, some of them creep into the same conference as these teams with my next one. But I've got Wisconsin and Purdue to fill in still, or Penn State, and we can go to conference number 4, Mike, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go to a conference that I called the Mountain Prairie Conference.
Okay.
So you see a lot of teams that are in the Big 12, and a lot of teams that are going to be in the Pac-12 next year, and a Big 10 school in there. So the general geographical areas of this, you could do it as two different divisions, a mountain division and a prairie division. The prairie division being more the Midwest schools where um, the mountain teams are more Rocky Mountain region, a little further out. But
How many
without
total?
further
So
ado,
6 and 6.
uh, kind of, but we'll stick with we'll stick with the actually it's 13. So
Okay.
we'll
Okay.
we'll go with
Yeah.
we'll go with the
Just
13.
no divisions. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah,
You just could
let's.
do it that way.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
um
But
we're going to start with some traditional Big 8 rivalries that turned Big 12 rivalries no more. But we're going to start with Missouri,
Missouri's okay. Missouri,
Nebraska,
Nebraska. Okay.
Kansas, and Kansas State.
Kansas and Kansas State. And if yeah, you can't see this, Mike, but the viewers can. They're all coming from the same block of teams here. So,
Yeah.
spoiler alert: I just copied all of mine over into this long line of teams on the left here. That's why it's taken me a little bit to see them because it's just kind of 90 teams listed. But yeah, those are your 4 teams. They might be
Yeah.
in the same conference for me later.
Yeah. Iowa State's another one.
Iowa State. Okay.
Yep. And then we're going to go Colorado.
Colorado. Okay.
hmm Colorado State,
Okay.
Utah,
Yep.
BYU,
Okay.
Boise State.
All right.
I believe that puts me at, does that put me at 11?
10.
Puts me at 10. Okay, well, then I do have 12 teams because we're putting a few more in here. They're optional, but they strengthen the football within this conference. If it decided we'd be pulling 2 teams up from the FCS level, I'm going to put North Dakota and State and South Dakota State into the Mountain Prairie Conference.
Okay. So they did make their way into my make believe college world for football, and definitely I think that definitely South Dakota State has like the basketball pedigree to do this in this sport too. That they've missed the tournament a couple times, like when they've been the best team in that league. But I think this would be really really cool if these two could jump up into this make believe conference. But Mike, that is 4.
Did
Let's
I mention BY or Boise State?
yes, yeah,
Okay, cool. Just wanted to
yeah,
make sure. Yeah. So you can start to kind of see a theme. A lot of these conferences are regionally based. But what's kind of cool about this one is you're putting 2 regions that are kind of next to each other in the conference. So you're obviously still going to see a good amount of travel. But if you're BY or Boise State, you're going to see travel wherever you have to go play. Same
yeah.
with the Dakotas. Really, same with Kansas and Iowa schools. So
Yeah, this is one that probably brings the most the amount of actual in the real world conferences. You've got SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Big 12, Big 12, Big 12, Colorado State is Mountain West, Big 12, Mountain West, and then Summit League slash FCS. So, but
Yeah.
all things considered, for in your make believe universe standards, this is probably the league with the most travel, I'm guessing. But in the real world, this would probably be one of the better ones.
Yeah. This would be a really entertaining conference. You look at, you know, KU is probably going to be the top dog in this year in and year out, but Kansas State also always has some good years. Iowa State has clearly been a good powerhouse. And you also look at the amount of money that BYU has along with Utah. So you're definitely, I think there's a little bit of a money discrepancy from top to bottom when you look at the amount of funds that BYU has to recruit versus South Dakota and North Dakota State. But with that being said, it would be a real good conference.
Yeah, and Boise State and Colorado State have run the Mountain West from, in the last 5 to 10 years. They've gotten a bunch of at-large bids and stuff. So
Yeah,
in this universe, it might take them a couple of years to get up to speed, but I think they would get there within a few seasons.
absolutely.
All right, Michael,
Yeah.
let's move on to conference number 5.
Conference number five. You could call this the Big East. You could call it the Catholic Conference, but I think you get where I'm getting at here.
Yep.
We're going to start and we're going to throw a curveball here. After being absolutely disrespected by the ACC, Notre Dame's moving on. They're playing their sports with the exception of football, maintaining independence in football, and they're going to play the rest of their sports in the Big East Conference.
Okay.
They're going to
So
be joined.
yeah, so they
Uh,
were in the Big East. This I think pre 16 team Big East breakup, they were there before they went to the
yes,
ACC, and
they
then
were.
Big Ten in hockey. But yeah, that makes sense to have Notre Dame there first.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Keeping on going from there, we're going to go with Villanova,
Villanova, okay.
Creighton,
Creighton, I have them somewhere. Here they are. Okay.
Seton Hall,
Seton Hall,
St. John's,
St. John's.
Georgetown,
I do not have Georgetown because they don't have a football team. So
hmm.
let's make some Hoya colors here. Yep. Okay. Georgetown.
Also, Providence.
And Providence also doesn't have a football team. So
I think the rest of these aren't going to have a football team.
okay. So yeah, let me just type them. I added the few that I remembered off the top of my head, but no. Okay. So you've
Yeah,
got 7 teams now, Mike. How many more do you have?
I got five more. Going to
Okay.
go with DePaul,
Okay. Yep. Another one of those.
Butler,
All right. So Butler, I did add in here, but DePaul, Butler,
mhm, Xavier.
Xavier, and then I'm guessing your last one will be Marquette.
I do have one more.
Okay.
And this one's a little out of the box, but we're going to throw another Northeast college program that used to have really good basketball success. Has dwindled in more recent years. But we're going to go with St. Joe's.
Okay. Not where I thought you were going with that one. The Philly schools are really interesting for this whole thing. Um, really, after like the A10 schools in there, and then Temple has been dragged into the American. The Big Five is still a pretty cool tournament if you've ever got a chance to go watch any of those games at any of the historic arenas down there in Philly. But yeah, that's an interesting conference, Mike. 12 teams. You have some of your newer age Big East teams like Marquette and Creighton. You have some of the old ones coming back, like Notre Dame, and you're keeping the core of that conference intact, but you're adding a couple of potentially big time players.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the world is going to wait to see St. Joe's come back. This is a school that even before we were watching college basketball, Sean, they had a really good reputation of putting out a lot of good teams, even a
Made
couple
a
Sweet 16 teams
Elite
here and
Eight
there.
or Final Four. They made one of
I
those
think
with
so.
Jameer
Yeah,
Nelson. Yeah,
yeah.
and
They had elite programs.
they had an at large team in there. I want to say like 2013 range. They had an at large team
Yeah.
that had like 3 guys who went to the NBA. but
Yeah.
at the end of Phil Martelli, and then they haven't been good since they fired him. They had another coach and they just fired him too. His name is escaping me, but yeah, it's a pretty like they don't if they're like we said before, if they're in this make believe league, they're going to be up there within a couple seasons. It's not going to be
Yeah.
a DePaul type situation, but they are part of the fabric of the Big East. All right, Mike, you've got 5 conferences. Who do you have for number 6?
All right. For number 6, I'm going to have a pretty traditional looking ACC conference. The ACC is going to stick to the Atlantic coast this time. It's not going to go coast to coast, so to speak. And it's only going to be a 10-team conference. It's going to be a little bit smaller. Some of these schools are going to trickle into the SEC.
Okay.
Um, so without further ado, the Duke Blue Devils.
Yep. I had my cursor hovered over that. Figured you might go there first.
Absolutely. And then we've got some other North Carolina schools. So UNC,
Mm-hmm.
NC State,
Yep.
and Wake Forest.
All right. So let's copy those 4 over. Those 4 are in a similar order for me too.
Next, we've got UVA and Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. Okay.
Then we're going to go with Georgia Tech,
Georgia Tech.
Miami,
Miami.
Clemson,
Clemson.
and then Clemson's arch rival, South Carolina.
Okay. So a little bit of a wrench into things there. I think it just seems like South Carolina should be in the ACC. Like basketball wise and football wise, but they're not. They have the rivalry with Clemson. They play every year on the gridiron. They play every year in basketball too. But yeah, Mike, the ACC has sort of been watered down in real life here with some of these not teams that are not in the East and not
Yeah.
good at basketball. Now on the football side, that's a little bit of a different story. SMU at least has helped, but back to the roots here for the ACC.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a part of it too is, you look at, Georgia Tech and Miami, looking at, do some of those schools go to the SEC? I think a lot of what I followed here is a traditional academic profile for the Atlantic Coast Conference. If it's a state school, with the exception of South Carolina, which is still a good school, exceptional public schools, along with some good private schools in that conference, all regionally based. There really isn't that much travel. You look at, half of this conference is played in North Carolina, in Virginia, another 2 more teams in South Carolina. So only real travel is going to be going down to Miami for most of these schools.
All right, that is conference number 6. Let's go to number 7.
Yeah, conference number 7, we're going to go with the Southeast Conference, the
Okay.
SEC.
All right, let's start. How many total teams is this?
This is a total of 12 teams.
Okay.
And this is largely going to be your traditional SEC powers. A few different changes here,
Yeah,
but for the most part,
there's an ACC team that you did not put in the ACC. I'm wondering if they find themselves here in the SEC.
I think they do.
Okay.
We're going to start with the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Okay. Noted basketball school here the last few
Yeah,
years.
yeah, not a football school right now, that's for sure.
That's more of a compliment to Nate Oates than anything, honestly.
I
Like,
mean, look at
yeah,
the job that he's done there. It's never something like that's never happened in Alabama before.
yeah,
Incredibly impressive stuff. Yeah.
these different conversation for a different time, but these basketball coaches at football schools, Todd Golden, Dusty May, Nate Oates, they're not doing too bad. So,
No, not at all.
yeah,
Yeah, even Bruce Pearl today.
yeah.
So,
But all right, who's
but
team
yeah,
number 2?
it's going to be Auburn.
Okay,
Speaking of which, we're going to go with Georgia,
Georgia,
LSU,
LSU,
Ole Miss,
Ole Miss,
Mississippi State,
Mississippi State,
Tennessee,
Tennessee,
Vanderbilt,
Vanderbilt.
Florida.
Hold on, I do not think Vanderbilt made their way over to this long sheet of teams that I have here. So Vanderbilt is black. That's easy. to make a color for them. All right, we've got Florida.
Hmm.
Okay.
Florida State.
Florida State. That is the ACC team that I was referring to.
Yeah.
I think they would
And then
go
you've
well in
got,
make believe SEC.
yeah. And then you got Louisville.
Okay, so Louisville to the SEC. Interesting. And
Hmm.
I'm guessing that you don't want to get a certain fan base mad by taking them out of the SEC, Mike. They're one of the
That's
fan
correct.
bases
And
that
that's
find
Kentucky.
themselves into our comments probably more than any fan base, and that is Kentucky.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
All right. So that is
Couple
yes.
schools
Yeah.
I did think about adding. Did think about putting Memphis in here. I just didn't think they fit the profile of the rest of the SEC conference. Them and Murray State were
Oh, okay.
outliers. Thought about it, but didn't quite make the cut here. Murray State would have been an interesting one. Um, and Tulane as well was another one that didn't quite make the cut. So if there was a minor conference, I'm throwing those three schools in there right there.
Yeah,
So
the when we did the football one, Mike, I did every single team because there's significantly less, and I sort of threw like a good like the good mid majors of the past 10 years together, and I think those teams that you mentioned could be in there with like Florida Atlantic and Liberty and Charleston and
yeah,
those sorts of schools that find themselves in 12 and 13 seeds quite often, and that would
yeah,
be a
Florida
cool
Atlantic.
conference because they don't really get
Yeah,
to play each other a lot in basketball, and it's why that it would be cool to see them play. But yeah, this SEC is pretty cool. I do like the pairing of the Florida and Florida State, and then Louisville and Kentucky. Those are two pretty historic rivalries that we do see in both sports, um, in the respective non-conference play. So, Mike, that
absolutely.
yeah,
And then another combo, I wasn't sure about Vanderbilt. I thought about throwing Vanderbilt in the Atlantic Coast Conference to match the academic profile. But two things I went back to was one, their rivalry with Tennessee. They're in the state of Tennessee. You kind of want to keep those two schools together. But then also they're not on the Atlantic Coast. So it's just a little bit more travel that's not necessary. Although they match the academic profile, we kept them in the SEC.
yep. So that is seven. Is that you have one more?
I have one more conference.
Okay.
We're going to call it the Minuteman Conference.
Okay. Yeah. The making these names of these new conferences are fun. Some
It
people were
is.
were getting on me for in the football one, like the Prairie Conference and the Plains Conference probably could have been flipped. To be honest, I didn't really think about it all that much. I needed a name for a new conference, and those are the two that I came up with. But yeah, the Minuteman Conference, Mike. If you know anything about history, you have a slight idea of where these teams are going to come from. But where are you going to be going for these teams?
Shocker, these teams are going to come from states that were colonies in the Revolutionary War, for the most part.
Yep.
So we're going to kick it off with the flagship state school of our home state, Rutgers.
There's a few teams out here that you're wondering where they come up, Mike, and I have a feeling that they're going to be here. Rutgers
Yeah,
leads off the Minuteman Conference.
yeah. UConn.
Okay. So UConn out of the Big East is something that um, obviously they have been in and out of that conference, but taking them out is yeah, obviously they don't fit the Catholic build that you've made, Mike, so they've got to find themselves in another league.
Not only that, but this also gets them into a conference that can play football. I'll go through this, and this is a basketball conference,
Mm-hmm.
but I absolutely stand by that this could be a legit college football conference.
Okay. Who else do you
So
got?
the next team we're going to see is Boston College.
Okay, yep. I
Could
had a
have put
feeling that
them,
they would come up too.
could have put them into the Big East, and I really thought about it. It was a coin flip, but at the end of the day, I needed to have 10 teams in one and 12 in the other, and that's
Yep.
why Boston College goes in the Minuteman Conference.
Okay.
Um, Next, I'm going to have Pitt.
Yep. Okay. I have a feeling I know where you're going with these next few teams, but yeah, the football aspect of it does make sense. Now, this is a make believe college basketball universe, but it would make sense for the Big East to just be a basketball league, and this Minuteman to be a Big East basketball slash football conference, which
Yeah.
is sort of what we saw. We had that 16 team Big East, and I don't know, 8 of them were in the Big East for
You had eight
football.
eight football teams.
Like Lamar Jackson and Louisville were in the Big East, at least for some of it, and Rutgers was in the Big East, and yeah, so
Yeah,
all that. So I have a feeling a couple of the Big East football schools might be coming up.
absolutely. And we've got two more of those coming up right now. We got Syracuse,
Yep.
and then West Virginia. West Virginia is a little bit of a weird one. They're not from West Virginia was not a colony per se, if we're going historically based off of the Minuteman Conference moniker. However, it's really hard to find a home for West Virginia
It
anywhere.
it
They're not on the
is
Atlantic coast. They're not in the Southeast. They're
not the
not in the
Big Ten.
Southwest.
Yeah.
They're not playing in the Mountain Prairie Conference. So this is a good home for them. They have a lot of natural rivalries, especially with Pittsburgh. So yeah, we're going to put West Virginia here.
Okay. That's
And then we've
six
got
teams.
one more traditional Power Five conference team here, and that's going to be the Maryland Terrapins.
Oh, okay. So not who I thought. Maryland actually is not on my list of teams here. So Maryland also football, but they've been in the Big Ten for a little bit. But yeah, they also fit the build for this conference, Mike.
Absolutely. For number eight, I've got a school that was actually kicked out of the Big East because they weren't good enough
Okay.
way back in the day, and that's going to be the Temple Owls.
Oh, all right. The team that I've predicted to come into these last two spots is not who you've ended up picking, but maybe they come up later. But Temple, one of those Philly schools that I talked about earlier, they are in the American Conference, which sort of makes sense for football, but for basketball, it really doesn't. They have a pretty good historic program like St. Joe's, but they have sort of been irrelevant for most of our college basketball watching life. So, yeah, cool. And they also fit here. They have a football team and they are in this geographical area for basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a school that has had success playing football. I believe they're building their own football stadium coming
Yeah,
up,
because
but
they play
also on
where
the
the
basketball
Eagles do.
side, they
Yeah.
have had some success.
Yeah.
Um, I lied when I said 10. I just thought of an 11th team for this
Okay.
conference.
Well, it
The
works.
11th
You
team
can
for
play
this
a home and
conference.
home in with 11 teams. Most of my conferences are 11 teams, by the way. But yeah, let's finish this one off.
So before I do the last two, the team that I just thought of that's going to go here is
Okay.
the UMass Minutemen.
Yeah, they've got to be in here, right?
They've got it. They've got some basketball history with during the Calipari years. Um, had some success, made it to a Final Four, even I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely some good potential. Yeah, you could toss them this side for football. I know should just kick them back to the FCS,
Well, it can
but
be a 10 man. It can be a 10 team football league, 11 team basketball.
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
who
And then
have you
my
got in
final
these
two
last
teams,
two?
one of them has actually never made the NCAA tournament, so
Hmm.
it's a little bit bold here. But I'll be remiss if I left out the Army Black Knights, the Navy Midshipmen.
Okay. Yeah, that works geographically. And Mike, I did tell you this, but if you didn't watch if the viewers didn't watch the other football one we did, I did put Army in the Big East for football. I did not put Navy. I put them in the American Conference. But yeah, geographically fits. And football wise, we're doing basketball universe, but this Navy would have won this football league this year probably. Maybe Pitt would have, but basketball. This is a fun basketball conference. A lot of different types of teams here in this league.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it cool is you see a lot of diversity of types of different schools. They all fit in the same geographical area. For the most part, you would take a bus to most of these schools, exception of a few. With that being said, though, you get kind of the mix of big time state school with small time talent that you're seeing at some of these schools. So it's a fun one. It's a really fun one, and all of these schools do play football, so it works for both sides of the coin.
Yeah, so that is your conference. You've got some new conferences. You've got some new ones. You've got some old ones. Pretty fun matchups across the board. You had some historical stuff in there, but you also created a wrinkle, which like would be fun as much as people did hate on like real life realignment, it was fun to see a couple new teams play,
Yeah.
especially in basketball where you're seeing them every year. Now in football with these mega conferences, you might not see a team for 3 years, but this is a basketball universe. Would be fun. You have a couple of 12 team leagues, Mike, but you didn't, or did you have a 13? No, I don't think so.
I
Just 12.
yeah.
So you're playing almost everybody twice a year, maybe a couple teams once a season. And then, of course, in the 10 and 11 team leagues, you can go true home and home if you want. But, Mike, I'm going to give mine, and then I'm going to throw a on the fly wrinkle into this. Where is the conference tournament going to be for each of these teams? So you can think of that while I go into my conferences here. I do have a couple teams that I did not remember, so I'm going to have to find spots for them. Um, but here are my conference. I do have a couple teams that I need to add. So bear with me for a minute or so while I do this. That's not what I want to do. Okay. So I have 8 conferences, and we might end up making a ninth here. I need to cut this down. Let's see if I can do it. Okay. I also need to cut it over visually, Mike, so the viewers can see. Um, so just give me another minute here before I start reading them out. Almost all of my conferences have 11 teams. I did add a 12th in some of them, and then the Big East has 14 teams. But I am going to start, Mike, where I told you I would start. We're going to go to the PNAC Conference,
Mm.
the Pacific Northwest Athletic Conference. We're going to be combining basically the teams in the Pacific Northwest. It's pretty self explanatory. We're going to start with the three major uh, conference or college basketball teams in Washington: Gonzaga, Washington State. Pretty simple
Mm.
there. And we are going to pair the two Oregon schools with them too, Oregon and Oregon State. Now that puts us at 5. We need to get to 11, so 6 more. We're going to be going to the great state of Idaho for one of them. Boise State will be joining the PNAC. We're going to go down to Utah, where we'll get Utah and BYU, the Holy War, will be going to the PNAC. And then we've got 3 spots left, Mike. Cal, Stanford will be joining the PNAC, and then the last team here. You could probably make this a 10-team league, but with where this school is located within driving distance to the two schools I mentioned, we're going to throw the Dons of San Francisco
Mm.
into
Thought you were
this
going
league
there.
as well. They had that great season under Todd Golden where they lost to Murray State, but they haven't been much worse than Cal and Stanford and Oregon State during this time, so they deserve to be in this conference. But what are some of your thoughts on the PNAC?
Yes, you see a lot of different types of schools here in the PMAC. I do like the the Dons of San Francisco getting into some big time college basketball here. Throw it back to the Wilt Chamberlain days here. But you've got a lot of, I think, kind of similar to, it's almost like the Pacific Coast of the Minuteman Conference. You
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of teams that have different academic profiles, different uh, t different amounts of money, but it all kind of fits pretty well together. You see kind of a coalition of Pac-12, Mountain West, and West Coast Conference teams all together.
And actually, I'm making an audible, and I'm adding a 12th team here. St. Mary's is going to go here too.
There you go.
They have to
Good
stay in
call.
the they have to stay in the same conference as Gonzaga, and they actually get some. I roughly know where Moraga is, but I think it's pretty close to like San Fran. Maybe not driving distance, but the 3 schools in the San Fran area and then the teams north of them, like St. Mary's fits in this conference. So on the fly audible here, the PNAC now has 12 teams. Um, do you think we're ready to move on to conference number two?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to go down south. We're going to bring back an old name, but we've got some new teams. We're going to have the Southwest Conference. Um,
Good
Now,
man.
we're going to have the Arizona schools, Arizona and Arizona State, joined by the Los Angeles schools and UCLA and USC. We're going to add another team from Southern Cal that definitely deserves to be in a conference of this caliber. We're going to bring the Aztecs of San Diego
Yeah, it's a
State.
school I forgot about.
And then we're going to move over and fill this conference out with some teams that definitely deserve it. We're going to go up and grab Colorado and Colorado State. We're going to get the Lobos of New Mexico. We're going to go into Nevada to get the Runnin' Rebs, the Wolfpack, UNLV, and Nevada. And that leaves us at 10. And Mike, we have a stellar mid-major coached by Baylor coaches Scott Drew's brother, Bryce Drew, and the Grand Canyon Antelopes will be joining the Southwest Conference too.
Lopes.
They definitely would be able to compete in this conference if it were real. And, it may not have the depth that the Big 12 currently has, but they've got a couple good teams at the top. This seems like a really fun conference.
Absolutely, it's very entertaining. You think about Grand Canyon University being on the same pedestal as the University of Southern California. That is pretty funny. Definitely regionally based. Not, I don't think there's a single team here that is part of the traditional Southwest Conference
Yep.
or that is in my Southwest Conference. But regardless, it's a pretty fun conference when you're stacking up current Big Ten Mountain West schools, as well as a few others trickled in there. Some Big 12 schools with Arizona, Arizona State. I think the beefier conference is going to be those Arizona State schools and those California State schools that you mentioned, UCLA, USC, Arizona State, and Arizona. But don't be surprised. Look, Grand Canyon competes with Arizona State, and they have a good game a lot, right? They've played a couple of years in a row, I think, in Phoenix, with Grand Canyon having some success there. So this could be a fun conference, Sean, especially when you mix in the Lobos and the Wolfpack from Nevada.
And this, to me, you have the Arizona and Los Angeles schools, but you've got three like great environments here that are not those schools. You have the Pit, you have the Viejas Center, and you have the Grand Canyon Arena. Like those are three really tough places to play.
Really good
And then
places,
you
yeah.
add on to that, Pauley Pavilion, the McHale Center, and all of that. Like this is another fun league. All right, Mike, we're gonna go to what was a pretty similar conference to you, but I couldn't think of a better name. We're going to call it the Greater Texas Conference for league number
Mm.
3. And there are a few teams that are not from Texas here, but that's the best name that I could come up with. Maybe
Oh, the Lone Star Conference. How about that?
Lone Star. Yeah, Lone Star. Or maybe we can make this the Southwest Conference and the other one the SWAC.
Okay.
Let's do that. So we have the Southwest Athletic Conference, and then we have the Southwest Conference. We're going
I
to be
like it.
starting off with, you guessed it, 7 schools from Texas. 6 of them were in the same conference that you had, Mike. Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Baylor, TCU, Houston. Be adding the Oklahoma schools as well, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. That gets me to 8. We have 11 total. We have 3 more teams coming in. We're going to be grabbing LSU and Arkansas. Uh, Somewhat, I would say probably Arkansas's biggest rival. If I'm missing something here, like that rivalry is probably their biggest from the SEC. And then the 11th team, Mike, we're keeping with the theme here of rewarding a good mid-major. We're going to bring the Mean Green of North Texas into the
Oh,
Southwest Conference. They have had Grant McCasland as their coach, who's at Texas Tech. They have Ross. They had Ross Hodge. He is now the West Virginia coach. I don't know their current coach's name, but guess what? They're still good. Again. So that
yeah.
program has undergone a lot of changes, and they're still good. And then, of course, in football, they nearly just made the playoff. So I think they deserve to make the jump to this conference. But Mike, we grabbed some of the other Texas schools that you did, but North Texas was the big change here.
Absolutely. And it looks like you did not include SMU. Is that correct?
I didn't um, audibling to them as team number 12.
Okay, there you go.
So
There you
yeah,
go.
I
That was
did.
my one question. But you seem to have nailed it. This is a fun one. Adding the mean green is interesting. But you look at their basketball success, whether that was in the NIT or in the NCAA tournament, they've had it in the last 5, 6 seasons. So it's been impressive stuff. It's gone from coach to coach, and they've done a really good job down there in Denton, Texas, a suburb of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So that's an interesting conference. I think the other one that really stands out to me is you put LSU there. LSU breaking away from a lot of their traditional SEC rivals. Arkansas has a lot of traditional rivalries already. You know, you got Texas A&M, you've got Texas. Those are the big two traditional rivalries from the Southwest Conference days. However, they get another one here with LSU, and for LSU, I don't know if Tiger fans are going to love this so much, but they do get to play a lot more regionally based teams. In going up to play UGA, that's probably a little tougher for them than going to play Houston, or some of these South Texas schools that have a lot of Cajun influence in them. So geographically, this one does make sense for LSU.
So up next, Mike, it's going to be LSU's former conference, the Southeastern Conference, one that will have a large number of teams that are currently in the league and then a few new ones. So let's start with the Mississippi schools: Ole Miss, Mississippi State, no surprises there. The Alabama schools: Alabama and Auburn, no surprises there. We've got Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt, also currently in the SEC. Now I've got four more teams here, Mike, to make it a 12-team league. This 12th team is purely for basketball. I mean, they've had an all right football program, but they probably deserve to be in a better league that they're in basketball, since the top team from their conference went to the Big 12 a couple years ago. I'm throwing Memphis into the SEC. Penny
Mm.
Hardaway and Memphis, they play in an NBA arena. They get great attendance. They are probably at the level of Gonzaga when it comes to above their the other teams in their conference. Like, they do not belong in the American for basketball. Now for football, it's a good league for them, but I'm adding Memphis to the SEC. I think you said you thought about it, but I think at least for basketball, it makes some sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you bring some valid points there. It would make sense, Memphis having a little bit of an off year this year. But with that being said, you look at the tradition of Memphis basketball over the last 18 years, they certainly fit that profile to be going to play in the SEC. Now, I decided to put them in with some other mid-major schools that could maybe make their conference a little better than the American Conference for what basketball is when I talk about throwing in Murray State, talk about throwing in Tulane and maybe a few of those other schools down there. But with that being said, that is an interesting one to throw out there.
All right, Mike, I've got three more spots in the SEC, and they will be current ACC schools. I am bringing Florida State into the SEC, like you said, Georgia Tech into the SEC, and
Oh,
Miami into the SEC.
wow.
I think it just makes sense for them, especially in basketball where you play a bunch more games. Like, it makes more sense for them to be in this. They Florida plays Florida State every year. Like I said earlier, Georgia plays Georgia Tech in football every year. I don't know about basketball, but it would be very fun to see Florida State, Georgia Tech, and Miami into the SEC.
Absolutely. I think you look at a lot of those schools, they've already talked about trying to join the SEC. We looked at Florida State a couple of years ago that were going to court over trying to be able to go to the SEC. They absolutely make sense. That's a school that you and I both agree on should be in that conference. And then you've got a few others, Georgia Tech and Miami. I kept in the Atlantic Coast based off of their geographical location, but they certainly do fit in the SEC. Probably not as good of a basketball conference as the SEC is currently. But with that being said, still a very entertaining one.
Yeah, because the flagship program of the SEC for basketball purposes is notably absent from the SEC. All right, Mike. Well, let's go to conference number 5. I've got 4 more. We're going to go to the Greater Plains Conference. And this is
Mm.
going to be a little bit of your conference that had a bunch of teams from different conferences. And spoiler alert, it's a lot of the same. We are starting up in Chicago with Northwestern. Then we're grabbing Butler from Indianapolis, Marquette from Milwaukee, Creighton, Nebraska, Minnesota, Kansas, Kansas State, Missouri, Iowa, and Iowa State. We've got a couple of rivalries in there, but Big Ten, Big East, Big 12, SEC. We've got just about every major conference in real life in this make believe conference. I think you had a similar idea where these teams are actually pretty close together, but they're sort of all in different leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at a lot of different types of schools. If you ever thought that you were going to group Butler with Nebraska, and Iowa State 15 years ago when Butler was just a lowly Horizon League team, people would have thought you were crazy. But you look at the modern landscape of college sports and geographically and in terms of talent, it kind of makes sense. Very different schools in terms of the identity of the academic institution, but it's a very clever and a pretty fun conference.
Yeah, and it has 11 teams. Let's we're at 50 minutes here, so I'm going to keep it moving a little bit. We're going to go to the Sand Pines Conference.
Ooh.
We've got 12 teams in this league. One of them can probably be taken out, but let's roll with South Carolina, Clemson, Duke, North Carolina State, Wake Forest, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Maryland, and then I added the triumvirate of Florida directional schools here: UCF, USF, and
Ooh.
Florida Atlantic. Now, I wanted to get it to 11, so I added FAU in there, but then I forgot Maryland, so I threw Maryland in there for Team 12. But this is a unique combination of teams. You get that Carolina combination that you had, and then I'm throwing in the Virginia schools, and then some of the Florida schools that have had pretty good basketball seasons recently. Florida Atlantic, as we know with Dusty May, what they did. UCF had a few good teams under Johnny Dawkins. USF really looked rolling there before their coach Abdur Rahim passed away. But this would be quite an interesting make believe conference.
Yeah, even UCF this year is having a pretty impressive season.
Yeah.
I think they're ranked 25th right now. They look better and better. Um, Interesting to be seeing, Maryland going down to Boca Raton, or it would
Yeah.
be also really funny to see Duke go down to Boca Raton or to Orlando or Tampa on the nightly basis. Certainly not what you would expect out of a traditional Atlantic Coast Conference team. But with that being said, you have an Atlantic Coast Conference that's not called the ACC here, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got some fun little things in here. I feel like some guys in the comments are going to have interesting things to say about this one, but I like it. You've got a little bit of everything sprinkled into these conferences, Sean. I've noticed you have prioritized, um, locations versus necessarily the profile of the institutions. And
Yep.
there's something to be said about that. There's 100%, one of the big issues in college basketball right now is the travel we alluded to earlier. And this is a great way to reduce that travel.
And like I think we've seen conferences of different caliber or teams of different caliber match up in conferences before. Like we have to remember where Butler was at before they went, where Marquette was at before Dwayne Wade and Tom Crean went to the Final Four. Like success changes some teams here, and Florida Atlantic hasn't gotten the opportunity to jump up from it, and UCF didn't when they had Aubrey Dawkins and Taco Fall and should have knocked off Duke in the round of 32.
32.
But
Yeah.
Duke and Carolina will pull all of the weight in this conference, not all too dissimilar from what they do already. But I've got 2 left, Mike. I'm going to start in the Big East, and I'm gonna make a little bit of a change here. I'm gonna bring this team over here, and we're gonna shrink the Big East by 1 spot to 13 teams. This is a very similar. It's your Minuteman and your Catholic Conference smushed together with another team that I believe was in the Big East of old. Let's start off in the New York City area. We've got St. John's, Seton Hall, and Rutgers going into the Big East. We're gonna have UConn joining them as well with Boston College. We're going to get some of the northern schools like Syracuse and Pittsburgh in here too. We'll fill it out with Xavier, Georgetown, and Providence. Villanova, if I didn't mention them already. And then we're going to be bringing in two more schools from Ohio, one from the Atlantic 10. We're going to
Ooh,
bring in the Dayton Flyers into the Big
okay.
East. This is something that might not be make believe in a couple years if the rumors are correctly. They do not have a football team there at Dayton. They would fit in the Big East really well. And then we're going to bring in Cincinnati as well, the Bearcats, former Big East school. Um, I just think that they sort of work in the Big East a little bit better for basketball than my last conference, which is the Big Ten. But what do you think
Absolutely.
about
Yeah.
this one?
Cincinnati's another school that I forgot to mention. We'll chalk them and
Yep.
SDSU up so far. But with that being said, I think what I like about this conference is every single region has their kind of pot of rivals, right? Right now in the Big East, you see Xavier out there. They're kind of out there by themselves in Ohio. You bring in the Dayton Flyers and then their crosstown rival in the Bearcats of Cincinnati. It really brings part of the conference together. So I do really like that you've got kind of that Ohio region. You've got that kind of tri-state area with Pennsylvania as well, if you sprinkle in Villanova. So yeah, it's a fun conference to see. Very similar profiles, I might add as well.
Yep. So, Mike, that leaves the Big Ten. I had 11 teams in this league, and then I took Louisville out of the Big East and slid them over to the Big Ten. That's because Kentucky's going to be joining them in the Big Ten.
Oh wow.
And the other two teams that are not currently in the league, we're going to be bringing in the Mountaineers from West Virginia. It doesn't really make a lot of sense,
Wow.
but
Okay.
had to, maybe I could send them over to the Big East and keep. Yeah, we're actually going to do that on the fly. West Virginia over to the Big East. So we
Okay.
can get the Big Ten to 11 teams. We're going to have a true round robin 20 game conference season. So we have Louisville, we have Kentucky, we have Notre Dame. And we're going to be filling out with the rest of the Big Ten schools: Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Indiana, Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Penn State. So 11 teams there. And Mike, this is exactly, we're just under an hour. So let's go back to yours for a second. We've gone quite a bit on the fly here. Where are your conference tournaments going to be?
Absolutely. A couple of
Southwest
these
Conference.
places. Southwest Conference, we're going to split it. We're going to go every other year, Dallas and San Antonio.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the Pac-12?
Pac-12, we're just going to keep in Los Angeles.
At the Crypto.com arena or the Intuit Dome?
We're gonna go with the Intuit Dome. Actually, no, we're gonna go crypto.com. We don't want to go to Inglewood. Inglewood's sketchy.
Okay. All right. What
Yeah.
about the Big Ten?
Big Ten, it's gonna stay in Chicago.
Okay. What about your Mountain Prairie?
My Mountain Prairie, we're gonna split it. They're gonna do half in Denver, half in Kansas City.
Okay. Big East?
Gotta stay at Madison Square Garden, right?
Yep. Easiest answer that I think you've ever given on the podcast
Yeah.
in the history. ACC.
ACC, traditional site, we're gonna stick with Greensboro.
Okay. What about SEC?
SEC, I live here now, so we'll call it what it is. Going Nashville.
Okay. What about your Minuteman Conference? I do have a suggestion if you don't. I'll give it after. It's going to be one of mine too, so actually I'll hold it. But where's your Minuteman Conference going to be?
It's got to be where the country was founded, Philadelphia.
Quite a few arenas to pick from there. Could I
Yeah.
interest you in some palestra action for the Minuteman Conference tournament?
Oh, you can.
Yep.
That'd be pretty fun, actually.
Yeah, it would. It's a amazing arena. If you're a college basketball fan, try and find time to go and watch there. It's Hinkle Fieldhouse, just older. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, those are some fun conference tournaments, Mike. You took 2 minutes to do that, and they're already better venues than the current ones that we have in actual college basketball.
That's absolutely.
All right, let's go over to mine. We're going to go to the Pacific Northwest Athletic Conference, the PNAC. We're going to be rotating between Seattle and Portland here. We might throw a Salt Lake City in there later in the rotation, but we're going to be going with Seattle and Portland first. I maybe San Fran could find their way in there too. This is one where there's probably not such a clear answer. Then we're going to go to our SWAC. This is our Southwest Athletic Conference. We'll be going to the Intuit Dome with you, Mike, and then we'll be going to Arizona, wherever the Phoenix
I
Suns
like that.
play. Don't know where that arena is, what it's called, but Phoenix Suns Intuit Dome will rotate there. Then we're going to go to the Southwest Conference. We're going to be bringing out a court to where the Mavericks play, American Airlines Arena.
Hmm.
And then the SEC, we're going to be going to Nashville. I think that's pretty easy. The Greater Plains Conference, we're going to be going to the United Center for this one. Um,
Nice. Yeah.
the Big Ten tournament has been there a ton of times. We're going to put the Big Ten tournament somewhere else. So the Greater Plains gets to go to the United Center. The Sand Pines League here, Mike, I think I'm going to have to copy you with your ACC. We're going to Greensboro. That tournament's just really cool when it's there. I think now the ACC has moved it to Brooklyn and Washington, D.C., and it's a little bit of a rotation there. But Greensboro is the ACC tournament. Like,
Yeah.
it deserves
Through
it.
and through.
Big East, Madison Square Garden, easy. And then the Big Ten, we're going to Indianapolis,
Mm.
as it is every 2 or 3 years, and where the Big Ten football championship game is too. But that was a little wrinkle that I thought of sort of on the fly here, and I think it was pretty fun. But Mike, an hour on Make Believe Universe here. I think it was fun. I'm going to make a graphic about it. Um, and as you know, realignment keeps happening. It is fun to, we will never be in charge of it, but if we were, this is how college basketball would look. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.